name is John McRitchie. I'm the Regional Director with the Ontario Centres of Excellence here in Toronto. Welcome to Connected and Autonomous Vehicles. The future of transportation is being reshaped in remarkable ways as we extend wireless connectivity to vehicles. From new information services for the traveler to the automated operation of the vehicle itself, we are seeing tremendous change. Today, we have the opportunity to hear from the leaders in the connected and autonomous vehicle sector who will look at the state of the industry, what types of partnerships and opportunities are available for small to medium enterprises in this emerging market. So, if you have any questions during today's session, there will be a Q&A period at the end of the session. I would like to first introduce to you the moderator of the session, Mr. Phil Masters. Phil is a senior consultant with ITS operations here with DELCAN. Mr. Masters has over 30 years' experience in intelligent transportation systems, and during his 33-year career with the Ontario Ministry of Transportation, he worked in areas such as freeway traffic management systems and traffic signal systems. His unique expertise in these areas includes all aspects of the design cycle, from concept development, preliminary and detailed design, construction, integration, and operations. His experience includes overall management of Ontario's ITS program and responsibility for the province's traffic signals. His affiliation with DELCAN started after he retired from MTO at the end of 2012. I'd like you to please welcome, before we do that, one quick note. At OCE, we are quite interested in this area, and we are looking to develop opportunities and projects. We hope, and we are working today with MTO in developing a program that I hope that we'll be able to announce within the next several weeks. If this is an area of interest for you, we've set up an email address, and if you'd like to get in touch with us to obtain more information as we were able to release it and talk about that program, if you'd contact us at the email that we've posted here on the site at cvav@oce-ontario.org. Now, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Mr. Phil Masters.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here today, and I'm looking forward to a very interesting session. And you're not going to be able to just sit there, you're going to have to work. Because really what this session is going to be about is you interacting with the panelists and asking the questions that are important. This is a very interesting area. Over my career, I've been through a number of major changes in our industry, and this is certainly a very significant change, and not just for the intelligent transportation systems industry, but very broad-based. Involves communications industry, it involves automotive industry, a number of other industries where we're seeing very significant changes, and it's going to bring about changes in the world as we know it. So, hopefully a very interesting session, and as I say, it's going to be up to you, the audience, to keep that interest going and keep asking questions. I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to introduce our speakers, or our panelists, and I've asked each of them to just say a couple of words after I introduce them that really identify for them what is a key important area in the whole area of connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles. So first, I'd like to introduce Steve Erwin. Steve is the head of the Intelligent Transportation Systems Program at the Ontario Ministry of Transportation. That was the position that I recently vacated, and Steve has now moved into that position. I actually hired Steve many years ago. I had hair, he had dark hair. It was quite interesting, but it was certainly one of the good decisions that I made in my career, and I'm glad to have Steve with me here today. Steve has more than 25 years of experience in transportation management at the ministry. Throughout his career, he's been involved in many aspects of transportation operations, planning, management, and safety. So thanks for joining us, Steve, and if you want to open with a couple of words.
Sure. Well, I guess first, thank you for retiring and moving on to DELCAN. Certainly helped my career. This is one of those fields that I think, we talk about paradigm shifts, and it seems an overused word, but from a transportation management perspective and understanding how people and goods move, this really is the next big wave for us. This is the evolution we've been looking for that enables all kinds of things to happen for us. And there are a number of challenges coming with it, but I think one of the fundamental things for us is to understand this is happening. I mean, regardless of what government does, various industries. This is happening. The communications are going in place, the technologies are being built into the vehicles, the applications and services are evolving. And so I think when we look at what the challenges for us are, it's really a couple of things. How can we in government get out of the way? How can we help enable things to happen without having to control every aspect of it? And there's opportunities for us there. And how can we change our operations to start to take advantage of this huge wealth of information that the connected and autonomous vehicle will produce for us, so that we can take a different role in managing transportation services and supporting what opportunities those types of vehicles will offer us. So those are really sort of the key areas of interest for us.
Okay, thanks very much, Steve. Our next panelist is Bob Burrows. Bob is the CEO of G4 Apps. Bob has spent his career in executive marketing and R&D positions for companies in the telecommunications and automotive industries. He's currently the CEO of G4 Apps, a software company providing mobile broadband and GPS-based safety, driver assistance, and energy efficiency solutions for OEM systems, smartphones, and commercial fleets. Bob, good to have you here, and if you can say a couple of words.
Well, thanks, Phil. Yeah, Phil has asked us to make some comments, or what do we think are the big things that can help this move forward more quickly. And something I've been in this for almost 7 years now. One of the true pioneers. I still haven't pulled some arrows out. But one of the things I used to say back then and still do, where would the cell phone industry be if 20 years ago everybody got around and said, let's wait for 4th generation? It would be nowhere. Nobody would have bought 7 billion phones. Nobody would have invested in everything else. And I've been on this horse for a long time. The technology is here. As you know, Steve says, the technology is here. Yes, there are some things to deal with liability and things like that. But the single biggest thing we need as businesses is we need investment, and to get investment, we need customers. So we need to find the next 10% or 15%, not the home run. What gets this flowing as a business that will attract investment and get the flywheel turning faster and faster? And I think, you know, one of the great things about it in Ontario, we're a small community of like-minded people who I think can work together, government and industry, to get those roadblocks out of the way faster than I think other jurisdictions can, and I look forward to doing that.
Very good. Thank you very much. Next, we have Kerry Johnson. He's the Automotive Product Manager at QNX Software Systems. Kerry has more than 25 years' experience as a software design manager, product manager, and project manager in the mobile and telecommunications industries. He currently works as a senior automotive product manager at QNX Software Systems, where he's responsible for product roadmaps and introducing new technology to the market. Kerry, good to have you here.
Thank you. So I'm just going to pick up on what Bob had said about where would it be if we waited for the cell phone industry to reach to the 4th generation. Well, one of my primary concerns, and QNX is probably not a very well-known brand name to a lot of individuals, but we have actually been at the heart of connected cars from the inception. We have been in General Motors OnStar, which is arguably the first ever connected car. You know, they are shipping millions of cars today with connected vehicles, but the whole state of connectivity is changing. People are bringing in their connectivity. People are bringing in their mobile phones. If you look at what's actually happening in the cars today, you're getting the center stack or the console with your navigation system. You have your instrument cluster. You have a heads-up display, and you have your smartphone. Those are 4 sources of information that are all coming at you, all competing for your attention as a driver. So what I think one of the challenges facing the industry, and something that really needs to be addressed, is how do you make all of those pieces work together in a way that benefits the driver, that makes the act of driving simpler and safer? And then how do you do that in a way so that the bringing in your applications and things that you use on a daily basis, bring those into the cars and make them work seamlessly in the car so that they're not legislated out. They can help the task of driving. If we as an industry do not get ahead of the legislation, you'll see you know, the innovation that actually that allows you to bring your cell phone in and work, or your smartphone in and work properly with the car, will be lost. So that's one of the biggest challenges I see facing us.
Thanks very much. And at the end, certainly at the end but not least, our Earl Hughson is the president of M.I.S. Automotive. Mr. Hughson spent 16 years launching startups and commercializing leading-edge technologies at Magna International. He established numerous international partnerships and joint ventures and successfully restructured companies to achieve sustainable profitability and operational excellence. For over 20 years, Mr. Hughson has led businesses which have consistently ranked at or near the top of their industries in all key metrics. And Earl?
Thank you very much for having me here today. What I find really interesting is the opportunity that's available right now related to connected vehicles. I've spent over 25 years in original equipment automotive parts, design and manufacture of automotive electronics. And it's a tough business to get into. And for the last 15 years, there's been a global trend to reduce the size of that supply base. And it's been hard to even maintain a position in it. For the first time in my career, I've never seen the industry so open to new entrants. They can't go to their traditional suppliers and find the technologies they need to solve these connected vehicle problems. The technologies are coming from other industries and other segments, and there is an open welcome by most car companies right now to meet credible suppliers of new technologies because they're not sure where the best solution to these problems is going to come from. So for companies in Ontario, M.I.S. that I'm involved with is a small to mid-size entrepreneurial Ontario-based company. We've partnered with Ontario universities that had leading-edge technologies related to this, licensed it, we're moving forward. In this room here today at Discovery are many technologies that the car company is looking for. And if entrepreneurs partner with the right technologies, there are organizations in the Ontario community, such as the automotive parts manufacturers, the ITS organizations that help mentor you and get you in the door. It's a window of opportunity that we shouldn't overlook as entrepreneurs and as technology companies that we should avail ourselves. Now is the time to get into this huge global market.
Okay, thank you very much. So you've heard some very initial comments, and I'm going to ask people to start coming forward. If you've got questions, please come up to one of the microphones. In the meantime, I have one question that I'm going to ask the panel, and they don't know about any of these questions, so we're going to see how this goes. So I guess, and picking up on some of the comments, my question is, how do we move forward to take advantage in Ontario of the advent of connected vehicle? There seems, as Earl just mentioned, there are significant opportunities. How do we move forward and start taking advantage of those opportunities? Open to anyone.
I'll take it from where I left off. I think it just takes initiative. Different people see how this relates to either the original equipment vehicle manufacturers. There are many types of vehicles and industries that are getting into the connected vehicle. It's not just the highway vehicles, but it's all types of transportation are being affected. And if you have a knowledge of that area, I think it's just a matter of networking with people involved in any of the areas, finding the trends. And as I say, in this room are the types of people and technologies and partners you need. So I think we need some entrepreneurs with specific vertical market knowledge to take some leadership, pull together and collaborate with people in this room here today, and we can have some tremendous success, especially with the support and government support we have to do it. It's all in this room. Just a few leaders need to take some initiative.
And I would echo that. I think, I've done a lot of work with industry over the last few years in this field and talking to a lot of our different businesses and the universities, et cetera. And I have to say, I'm incredibly impressed with both the innovation and I think the skills and business sense that a lot of these folks have. And so from our perspective, we're trying to look at the government level at what we can do to help provide encouragement without necessarily being the driving force. So, we're looking at how do we change some of our operations to take advantage of the data that services can provide and move away from having to build our own infrastructure. And we're working with OCE, and John, kind of alluded to it, but we're working with OCE to create a research fund that helps sort of make that bridge from a research project to a product on the street or a service on the street. And can we use that to help seed ideas and to demonstrate what kind of skills and capabilities we have in Ontario. And I think if we can use opportunities like that to demonstrate our skills, it gives us a better marketing opportunity as well when you start going to the automotive manufacturers or even to the public and the politicians to demonstrate you've got those capabilities.
Actually, I'll follow up to some degree on what Kerry said. The first thing we have to do is make sure everything is safe. If we don't do that, this game should not be on the road. And we all agree with that. But if we have 10 great technology companies, maybe there's room for 30, but if those 10 don't get to market, what's the use of having the other 20 sort of thing? And I think in Ontario we have a great amount of technology, and there is technology in other places that we're bringing to bear. Kind of repeated what I said earlier, but I think we need to find a way to make it safe, to demonstrate that it's safe, to get drivers to pull this into their cars in a safe manner, and to get, maybe it's only 3 of those first 10 companies successful so that they create a whole process that brings it forward and makes fertile grounds for the next 20, so they don't just get a technology and get their nose to the window and can't get past it.
So a little bit different thought on this is that, Ontario is fortunate enough to be near the epicenter of automotive manufacturing in the world. Like Detroit is just right at our doorstep. Also, we have a great amount of Canadian manufacturing here in Canada with GM and, pretty well all the major OEMs are here. We need to seek out and find things that will, technologies and solutions that Ontario can bring to them as Ontario going forth to the OEMs, and let's work out some form of collaboration directly with the OEMs. There are technologies that are needed that are not being developed. There are things to help driver distraction. That it's a gap. There are things such as imaging, vision recognition, things such as this, sensor technologies that the market is waiting to have cost-effective solutions. But in order to really act, I would say, as Ontario in the automotive industry and the connected car industry, it's take advantage of our geographic location and nearness that we have to Detroit and the automakers there.
Very good, thanks. Okay, sir, our first questioner. If you can just tell us who you are and a little background and then your question.
My name is Nick Danilov and I'm from SingularityWeblog.com. My question is about the ultimate bottom line, or perhaps you would disagree with me, and that's not connected vehicles, that's autonomous vehicles without internal combustion engines. The issue of safety was mentioned here by most of you. It's been almost 2 years that I rode in the Google car, and at 2011, I already was impressed that that car drives better than most drivers you would see out here today. So for me, the safety issue is almost a no-brainer here. My question, though, is the following. How do we perhaps go directly to the bottom line, to the ultimate step, which is to say, push forward the introduction of the autonomous vehicle? For example, in the United States, already 3 states have legalized the usage of those cars on the streets.
The testing of them.
Yeah.
The testing of them, okay. Well, the Google car has already something like 600,000 miles on it, and it has 2 accidents. Both of them were while driven by humans. Yeah. And the other issue is, my concern is that being so close to Detroit actually puts us very far from innovation in 2 fronts. So first of all, the internal combustion engine is too close to Detroit. The innovation, the way I see it, comes from places like Tesla. And currently Tesla just started a new partnership with Google, where the next iteration of the Google car would not be a Prius or a Lexus, but it will be actually a Tesla. So that's what my concern is, and then the question is, how do we move beyond the internal combustion engine? And then, of course, is now that we have the electric engine, then how do we get rid of the driver? Because that's the bottom line for me. It's safer, it's better, it's cheaper, and it's more fun probably to do other things while the car is taking you somewhere. I mean, I spent today 35 minutes getting here, while I should have probably spent no more than 15, because that's the distance that I'm from. And it's one thing that can make me very productive on the way if I don't have to be behind the wheel, for example, right? Thank you, that was a long question.
Joe, I'll take
Go
a
ahead.
crack at it. I must say I really enjoyed Mr. Diamandis yesterday. And he had his curve, and he showed the exponential curve, and he said, unfortunately, governments and a lot of older companies are still on a linear curve. It really brought home to me that I think this is an area where if you look at regular vehicles, connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles, the innovators are going to be well into autonomous vehicles before governments figure out how to deal with connected vehicles. And that's, I want to build that into an opportunity for Ontario, because this is the nature. I mean, these are people who are responsible for the safety of hundreds of millions of people and all these sorts of things, and they legitimately have concerns, as do the car manufacturers. So all of us get technically enthusiastic, but there are other people who have very real concerns that they've been tasked with, and we can't just say, hey, you guys are too slow. They still have to look after their responsibilities. But I think this is one of the places in Ontario where we have government agencies who are sitting here today to work with that. Does that mean we're going to have this next year and everybody else is going to be 10 years? No. Might it mean that we're there in 5 and others are in 10? Maybe. Let's work together on it.
Yep.
I think your comment's very timely. It was just a few weeks ago that myself and a member of QNX visited Steve Erwin, who hosted a meeting at Ministry of Transportation where we were making the pitch for licensing of autonomous vehicles immediately in Ontario. There's technology and companies in Ontario capable of doing that within the next year. We need to be able to test Canadian technology on Canadian soil. It would be a shame for us to take our innovations to California to test them and get the first press release. So we got a very warm and welcome reception from Ministry of Transportation. We're hoping they're going to be there to meet our needs as our autonomous vehicles come out. The progression, though, of going straight to autonomous, I think is already happening, and I think it's going to happen much sooner than you realize. But I think it's because most people don't realize it started several years ago. You see small, systems started sensing things around them. Then they started warning the driver. More and more systems take control away from the driver. Your anti-lock braking system takes control away from you if it passed a point. Your electronic stability control takes over a whole bunch of vehicle functions, rights the car, and only gives you control back when it feels you're ready to, that you can carry it on. You're seeing park assist, which is a fun convenience, but it's testing out subsystems of autonomous vehicle in a safe way. And these systems need to be tested, and you're seeing it, whether you realize it or not. A lot of autonomous vehicle sensors and controls are in your vehicles today, and it's growing. And it's only a matter of adding a few more sensors, which some vehicles already have, and integrating it and deciding how much control. Some car companies have a vision for autonomous cars. Some car companies see it as a co-pilot only. There's a lot of technology by looking at what the driver is doing. If he's looking sideways, then you should take control away from the driver. If he's looking where he's going and he seems in control, then maybe you say, he knows what he's doing, I'll just warn him. So there's a lot of different decisions being made, but we're on a path that I think is faster than most people realize to the autonomous car, and I think Ontario is going to be a big player in it.
I think as well, Ontario actually has a legislative framework that makes it relatively easy to do demonstration projects and begin piloting things like this. We have pilot legislation under the HTA that allows the government under a regulation to define a project that would do this, as long as the vehicle meets the existing safety standards, and every vehicle that I've seen that's autonomous right now does. It could fit under one of those pilot projects. So it's a relatively straightforward thing. The reality is, though, that even if we want to go all the way, we're going to have years of a mixed fleet of vehicles, and we need to understand how that mixed fleet is going to work together and how we protect one vehicle from another. There's an anecdotal story about if a whole bunch of cars were autonomous on the road and you want to drive your own vehicle, best thing to do is aim at the car so it'll get out of your way, because it doesn't want you to hit it. We've got to deal with things like that, because we do have people that will take that attitude, and it's the reality of our world these days. So there always has to be that overlayer of safety. But I'll tell you that the people that we're dealing with, that I market to internally, because part of my job is championing some of these ideas, we're getting a lot of excitement about the potential this could achieve. We look at new approaches to transit. do you need, and Metrolinx, if Metrolinx are here, don't yell at me. Do you need a 40-person bus if you can throw a bunch of autonomous vans out there and have them drive people where they want to go, and these vehicles get used 70% of the time? So they have a great occupancy rate. It changes the whole model of how we can run the transportation network. Columbia University did a study last year that looked at, our current capacity for a lane is 2,000 vehicles an hour. If you were to go fully autonomous within that same footprint, you could do 12,000 vehicles an hour because you can do tighter spacings, people won't be meandering the lanes, you can do more narrow lanes, there's space savings, all kinds of benefits, and we're looking at how to take advantage of those. But I think a lot of it is being driven now by industry and the potential to bring jobs to Ontario or to the various jurisdictions. That is that first real bite for us to think about how we invest it and to make it real. But there's a lot of people getting very excited about the opportunities coming, so it's going the right direction.
And there are other issues that, in terms of actually rolling this out, this technology out, as you pointed out, it's going to be a mixed fleet. What about liability? What if that autonomous vehicle does smash into your house? Who pays? What does the insurance need to do to adapt? You started off your question by the question of economics, getting to the bottom line. When can we get there? Electric engine only, no gasoline, all autonomous. Well, it is about economics. There are not too many people who could afford to drive a fully electric Google-powered car around or have it drive them around today because the technology in there are one-off and they're not productionized to the scale that would be low cost. One could even argue today that the life cycle cost of a hybrid vehicle is still based on, after you peel away all the subsidies and such, is probably not even as effective as a gas-powered vehicle, depending on for the average driver, as well as just the fact that the charging infrastructure will take a while to get to where it needs to be in order to enable this on a mass scale. So it will be evolutionary or a progression, but it's a while before I think we'll see them. We'll be able to cut out drivers.
Great. Yeah. Thanks very much. Just one thought that came to my mind as we were talking about this, and I look back at the experience of the very first what they called the automated highway system, which was the very first concept of driverless vehicles, and unfortunately they bit off more than they could chew, and it essentially failed. Now a lot of those base components we're now seeing in cars, and so there is definitely a balance between going as fast as we can, but making sure we're not going too fast in the direction. Anyway, sir, your question.
Hi, I'm Abdul from Ottawa, Ontario. We are working on a sensor-based systems for parking. So my question is, number one, when you are adding a lot of features to a car, like suppose QNX is adding all those, dashboards and where it changes colors and all, how does it distract the driver and connecting mobile to your phone? Is it encouraging the use of mobile, which might lead to more accidents? What's your thoughts on it? And second question would be, you talk about innovation startups and all those things. What's the stage to approach those companies? Because a lot of government says they support startups, but the qualification, RFP, and all those things, they say a different story. So what would be your thoughts on that?
So I'll start off that one. So the remark regarding encouraging people to use their mobile phones in cars, that's not exactly how I would portray what it is that we're trying to accomplish. The fact of the matter is people will use their mobile phones in cars. People will use smartphones in cars. It's better to find a way in which it can be done safely. The vast majority of people today, and I only have to look at my son and daughter to realize how connected they are to their smartphone. They will spend many, many, many more hours with their smartphone with their car than they ever will with their car. So it's a part of their life. They bring in their social media, they bring in things that they do, they bring in navigation, they bring in parking finders, the rate of innovation in the mobile space is far outpaces that in the automotive space because they don't have that safety constraints to worry about. So the real trick here is not to encourage the use of phones and tablets as they exist today with the interfaces they exist with today. How do you integrate those into an experience into the car so that people can bring in things that they're accustomed to and familiar with and having at their fingertips, but to do it in a way that's safe and non-distracting. And just on other fronts there are a couple key participants, key stakeholders in industry that need to be paying attention to these. One of them being the mobile phone vendors and carriers as a group, and then the auto manufacturers as the other. So there needs to be some collaboration to create some guidelines and distraction. And to that end, QNX has been involved in starting up an ITU, an International Telecommunications Union, focus group on driver distraction. And we do take these things seriously. The real challenge is to put them to use safely to help you with the driving task, not to distract you from the driving task.
I just have one comment to follow up a bit on that. U.S. DOT, National Highway Traffic Safety Agency, sorry for all the acronyms. But these are the guys who control what goes in every new vehicle, what goes in commercial vehicles, aftermarket, and all that stuff. And they're the people who sometimes take years to do things. But especially for driver distraction, they have taken the approach and funded a lot of research and done a lot of work that you start with driver workload. I almost don't care what device it is, but you start with driver workload. And they have come out with new guidelines. And one thing they say at the end, which I think is very telling, that we expect as long as it is appropriately affixed in the car, if a personal device follows these guidelines, it would be acceptable. So they're starting with the function, not the mode, and they've been very explicit to the dismay of some of the car companies, because they'll say you can only have so many, it has to be a font this big, you can only have so many characters on the screen, it can't rotate, you can't have moving maps. That one really bothered the OEMs. But you see, I think, a very purposeful and informed approach to safety through function enabled by technology rather than the focus that other people would have on you can't have a personal device in a car. Now, to me, there's no doubt that having that on your screen in your car through a vehicle system is better, but again, the approach that it's functional based, I think, is a major step forward.
I always hate being the government guy who has to answer the distracted driving question. Clearly it's an issue, and we see it today. And so I think part of the recognition has to be that society has changed. The attitude towards driving is driving your primary function. I mean, when I turned 16, man, I got my license and was driving the car first day. My daughter, who's 17, she's got her license, but it's just not that important anymore. And so we need to start to look at how do the laws and our behaviors change, and how can we make those changes safer and adapt to them. And so I think when we talk about trying to integrate these devices so that there's some context awareness around them, so that it's not just I'm in the car, I'll pick up my cell phone and I'll look at it, but maybe the services start to flow through your car. And you see that with a lot of Bluetooth connections. But we need to still add to that, and there's a lot of companies working on it, and Ryerson University's been working on it, and other universities. How does the car and the technology understand what it is you're trying to do and what is safe to allow you to do during that? A lot of work on that. We don't have the answers yet, but they will emerge. And again, I think that's one of the reasons why we need to look at it from a pilot and demonstration basis. One of my concerns on this, though, is the autonomous vehicle. And I'm cruising down the road and I am paying no attention at all to what's going on around me, and something goes wrong. And how do we bring the driver back from their nap and have them take over control of the vehicle if something fails, because components do fail periodically. So there are a lot of milestones and things for us to develop, but I mean, again, it will continue to evolve. How we go through that paradigm shift, how we go through that evolutionary period without making it too unsafe, because I think when you get to the other side, the safety benefits are going to be there. Now, you had a second question that I...
Yeah, my second question was, what's the government support on startups? Like integrating startups with whatever you guys are doing. Like suppose if you have initiated, you only deal with the big boss, big guys. What could be?
This is a research fund that we're.
I'm asking in general. I'm just asking how can startups tap into what government is doing right now?
Well, I think, you know, from the government's perspective, watch for opportunities where there are research funds and things going ahead, but I think OCE is one of the key things to helping startups make those connections across different businesses and opportunities. So I think participation in these kinds of things is excellent.
Yep.
I just, as a startup ourselves, you know, I'll make some comments. First thing to do is find customers. You can have all the technology you want. You can think you're the coolest guy. No matter how cool you are, there's 20 other groups doing the same at other universities and other places. So the first thing to do is find customers. And equally first, do everything totally safe. You can never, you know, don't put Angry Birds on a car. Don't put something that can fail in a car. Don't have something that if it does fail, leads to something catastrophic. You have to go through the principles that the car manufacturers have lived through forever. You know, do those two things and then look for a way to market. And there are ways to market. There's lots of ideas that, you know, just like apps in general, that people haven't thought of and the world may be waiting for, but you start with customers. Don't start in your lab or you'll bang off a lot of walls.
Okay. We'll go on to our next question.
Yeah, from the University of Waterloo, I have a two-part question. One, how do you envision the consumer paying for this? And you currently, like, use OnStar as an example. It comes on your GM product, and hopefully you like it enough through the trial period that you sign on and use it. Or satellite radio. Parking app that's being worked on by the question ahead of me. Well, does that get monetized by the developer taking a percentage of the incorporated automatic pay function of not only finding the spot but billing you for it? So I'm interested to know how you see the consumer paying for these elements within the connected and autonomous vehicles. And the second part is, who else should pay? You know, if you're going to have...
Sorry.
If you're going to have internet access in vehicles by the end of the decade, and that's generally an accepted consensus, that internet service provider who's going to offer a service not unlike satellite radio, you mentioned, Kerry, the service providers for cell phones from a consumer perspective. What about service providers for business networks? You know, if I'm in a company vehicle or a fleet vehicle and it could tap into my agenda so it knows where I'm going to next and then can optimize my electric motor and the onboard controller for it to, you know, realize I'm going up the hill over the escarpment in Milton and there'll be some regenerative braking coming down the hill to tie into that. Do any of those play a role, or who else beyond the consumer? So two-part. How do you see the consumer paying, and who else besides the consumer do you think should pay or be a little more upfront in their involvement with the emergence of connected and autonomous vehicles?
Kerry,
Thanks very much. That's a
first,
very timely question because
Private government, I would just put a gas tax on.
Yeah.
But
all of transportation. That's the big question for all of transportation today: is how do we pay?
Yeah. Well, no, that
Everybody's anxious not to pay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I can pull up the traffic conditions now if I go onto my Google Maps to get between here and where I need to go. And you alluded to it, Stephen, in your comments about how you want to tap into what's out there now. You're not looking to recreate the wheel. You want to augment the infrastructure that's there, not build over it.
And yet you do pay. You're paying for your phone, and so how you share that cost out, provide revenue back to the application developer and the service providers is maybe the more fundamental question. But you are willing to pay because you're providing that base communication and you're providing the base car and you're paying for the fuel, et cetera. So the consumer has demonstrated that for transportation and information services, they are willing to pay some money. So I think now it's how do you adapt that model to having new service providers enter into it? I won't tax, by the way.
I think absolutely the consumer is willing to pay, and people have shown that the consumer is willing to pay. OnStar is a case in point. It would probably surprise you to know that over 50% of the people who actually, because GM offers OnStar, as a base 2-year subscription, at least 50% of the people retain that service after the free grace period. So that's really, and what you're getting there is really safety and security, and in some cases convenience. So consumers will pay for convenience. What are the applications and what are the things that are actually valuable to a driver? That's the key question that will pay. And it is location-based services, easy access to things that are convenient at your fingertips, that help you with the task of driving or navigating around. You know, location-based is a great one, and entertainment. Not video into the car, because you know what, these tablets and mobile phones, they're just going to take that, you know, they're the low-cost alternative to keeping your children entertained. But you know, consumer media, Sirius again is a perfect example of people willing to pay for entertainment in the vehicle. So those models are already established along those lines. The rest, you know, once vehicle safety measures and vehicle safety equipment and sensors and DSRC and these technologies are legislated, again, the consumer will pay, because those costs will be passed on to the consumer by the OEM. They're not going to do them for free. So I think in the end, unless you have a model where it is primarily consumer funded, it's probably not going to take off. You know, the key is to get the right mix of convenience and safety and security that the consumer is willing to foot the bill for. And obviously it can't be an exact double of your mobile phone bill. Again, the carriers who are providing the backhaul, you know, obviously like for connected cars, GM doesn't deliver OnStar on their own. For years they've partnered with Verizon and now through AT&T. So those, again, it's just an example of a consumer paying for that networking connection. So that's...
Earl?
Yeah, I come from the hardware side of the business as opposed to the application side. And there's a lot more hardware going into autonomous vehicle, radars and sensors of all types, and a lot of autonomous control systems that we'll need. And that's going to add some cost initially, but I think there's been a track record in the industry. You know, we all had, if you were lucky, 2 disc brakes, and then you got 4, and then you got 2-wheel ABS, 4-wheel ABS, into electronic stability control. You know, it wasn't that long ago, or maybe I'm getting too old, where, you know, it was $2,000 for a driver's side airbag. And now in a $12,000 car, you can get 12 airbags standard equipment. We're seeing an awful lot of these technologies integrated. The automotive industry's lovely place to work, as I've been for 25 years, because all your costs go up and your prices go down every year. It's always a lot of fun. I think it'll be relatively easy, based on the track record of the industry, to absorb the costs and keep cars affordable as they have, despite the complexity of cars compared to what they were 20 years ago. The affordability for a median income is still surprisingly maintained with the technology we have today, and I think we'll do that for these advancements from the base vehicle price going forward.
I have a few comments. I think one on technology and the other on charging mechanisms. You know, first off, if you go back to as much as OnStar is doing well lately, if you go back 10 years ago, only 10% of people paid for it the second year. Yeah. And you know, GM lost money forever. And indeed, if you go to a telematics conference and you ask anybody, a room full of 20 people, have any of you made money yet? Even though you've been in the business for 10 years, you might get a couple, but you don't get many, because there have been so many people who started it out of a love of technology and kept saying, we'll make money next year. And so, you know, some have done extremely well. Inrix Waze, for example, have done extremely well, but there's a lot who haven't. But there is technology coming, and the first of things, and you know, back in the old days of OnStar, you had to pay exorbitant amounts per month for that second connection. Now you pay a lot less, because the carriers are being much more aggressive in machine-to-machine tariffs, and they've taken rates finally down to next to nothing. The other thing is you can tether it to your phone, and now it can be on your family plan just like your tablet. Yep. A third thing that is being worked on is sponsored by the automotive OEMs as well as the carriers, is the ability even for a single SIM to split billing. So that if I'm the car company and I want to steal some bytes from your plan so that I can monitor stuff, I can demonstrate to you that I'm paying for that. And I think those things will help. Having said all of that, we're a small company. We need to make money next year, not 5 years from now. And you've asked, I think, Ross, one of the most important questions in the industry, because it's so easy to get caught between, well, we could have that out in 3 years, but maybe Ford will offer it for nothing. Or Google already offers it for nothing. So what you need to do as a small company is, how can I find the 1 or 2% who for the next few years will pay me something before it becomes something that somebody else wants to offer for nothing? Or as an entrepreneur, I don't want to sell my company to those guys in 3 years. And though I hate the latter one because it sounds like you're copping out, but we have to realize that things move in those cycles, and maybe that's the best thing for entrepreneurs here to take to heart. That the best way is give a good go at it, but be prepared to recognize that it is good at what you're doing. It might become a commodity in 3 years, and sell and move on to do your next one.
But, you know, the other thing, we've talked about Google a couple of times. And we keep saying Google is free, Google is free. Well, Google isn't really free. Now, we don't pay money for Google, but we pay with our time being divided towards those advertisements. Because Google is not free of advertisements.
In cars.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, in the cars. But I mean, you know, overall. And I think that's the other thing is we have to look more broadly than just, you know, paying is, you know, me taking a dollar, you know, a $5 bill out of my wallet and giving it to somebody. There's other forms of payment, and it's all about, you know, how we divide our time, and are we looking at advertising? Are we receiving advertising?
Or even the value of your data.
Right, exactly.
AM, FM radio is not free, even though you don't pay for it. Like, it's funded by advertising, so those models exist as well.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I guess the other side of it, government will pay for part of it. I mean, we subsidize operations.
Small amounts.
Yeah. I mean, I have a $25 million operation, and I could do parts of that operation more effectively with information coming from the private sector than I can doing it myself. And so there's base levels that I can take on. We've got huge investments being made on the transit and broader transportation services side. And again, if we can find ways for these technologies to make that more effective and efficient, we can in fact save money there, reduce the level of investment, or defer capital expansion plans a number of years. And that's a huge savings back to society, which allows society in general to reinvest it. Doesn't necessarily put it in Bob's or Earl's or Kerry's pocket yet, but, you know, it's getting closer.
Thanks, Ross. Good question.
Yes, sir.
Hello. My name is Richard Wagner. I'm president of a company in Waterloo, Ontario called Provala. We are a strong networking company. We have dealt around the world with carriers around the world as far as Korea, Japan, Europe, and the US, dealing with networking issues. When it comes to the connected car, networking somehow has to factor in. I find my travels taking me around the world rather than in my own community trying to solve and embrace these issues. Is Ontario doing anything to help us with the networking? And I noticed last week was a ruling from the FCC to deal with the DSRC network. It was a major ruling that's going to have a long-term impact on the connected car and safety. In Canada, that network is already being used by some of our telecoms. So can you tell me where I can go to talk about some of these networking issues in the connected car space in Canada or Ontario?
I'll take a bit of a technology crack at it first, Phil. I mean, the first thing at 5.9, we have reserved some of the spectrum in Canada on a trial basis, and there's a number of associations who have been lobbying to get it certified as a permanent reservation. And yes, you know, again with ITS America, we've been trying to keep the 5.9 gigahertz, the DSRC spectrum set aside, and we kind of thought we were doing well until a couple of days ago. But I also have to say, as much as that particular technology, it was defined in 1998. Technically, it's a terrible use of spectrum, very inefficient by today's standards. But nonetheless, the US DOT had to say at one point, look, we're going to do something and instead of keep changing. And they chose to do that, and they've moved ahead. But you know, to be candid, there are other people in the community who are saying, we don't even need that. Particularly with autonomous vehicles, we can use perhaps LTE with a bit of, you know, as long as we do things right, maybe we lose connections a few seconds here or there. The car is smart enough to deal with it. And those are, you know, two ends of the spectrum. There's still a lot of energy in the community. So to think of and a lot of people like to think we need a robust every second DSRC network everywhere. That was the old thought, and there was a lot of research put into that in a lot of places where it didn't quite work. There are now other people saying maybe we don't need that, that the autonomous vehicle with enough smarts in the car lightens up that burden a whole lot. Kerry, what do you think?
I absolutely agree that I would not want to build an autonomous vehicle that relied solely on a infrastructure and networking connectivity in place at all times. The technologies that interest us are in the areas of high capacity computing, vision systems, sign recognition, pedestrian recognition, all things that can be done independently by any OEM regardless of standards, which actually really opens the door for innovations as long as that's safe. Now, that's probably not the right overall picture. However, autonomous should be autonomous in that the vehicle is self-aware and self-sensing rather than being controlled by a brain somewhere else. Fundamentally, so I think that kind of does take away the need for that ubiquitous network. I'm not sure if we're getting at answering your question, but
I was just wondering if there's any leadership or you see any companies. I'm not debating whether the DSRC is the right way of going, but I do see in the US they've taken a leadership role and they've set aside the spectrum for safety. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I don't see the same type of initiative on networking in Ontario and Canada. I know the city of Stratford a year ago signed a deal with an automotive initiative in the US, but I don't think anything ever happened in that regard. So I was just wondering, is it something that we should, or is there anyone out there talking or dealing with this issue?
There's some discussion of it at ITS Canada's conference, which I don't want to market over Top OC, but it's your last day, so it's, which is going on up at the Royal York. And tomorrow afternoon, they've got their connected vehicle working group or technical committee. One of the issues that came up with that committee a month ago or a month and a half ago at their Ottawa meeting was the same discussion. And so there may be some further discussion with them. Industry Canada was part of the discussion group as well to try to understand some of the implications. So there may be some opportunities and activity going on with that.
And there are 2 trial networks that will be underway shortly. One at UBC will be a DSRC trial network through that part of Vancouver, and one in Edmonton, and they're collaborating. So there will be 2 DSRC trial networks in Canada. You know, if not now, certainly within 6 months. I know they were asking me what equipment to buy, a few months ago. So
it's an important question though, because there's a lot of things in the whole connected vehicle, autonomous vehicle, self-driving environment that can be done without that, millisecond latency type of communications. But when you start looking at the interface to traffic signals and things like that in real time, where you're trying to negotiate, access to a traffic signal or changes to the time or a balance with demand, it becomes a more critical thing. As we start moving further into LTE and some of the new evolutions, long term, I wonder whether we're going to start seeing those technologies becoming almost ubiquitous. We start merging those capabilities. But today, it would be a tough thing to implement without that. I don't think we have an answer for you on that. I don't think anybody does, but I think there are people trying to look at it. I don't know how actively.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep. Do we have any, we've got time for one more question, if anybody has a question. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Newman. I own a company called Breakers Early Warning Systems. Are you aware of any companies that are attempting to take small individual companies with a specific concept or specific idea and pair them with other entities to try and make a movement to go forward? In other words, I have an idea that would help with emergency vehicles and alerting civilian drivers. As an individual with a company of one, I'm finding it very difficult to kind of get into the right position to be able to make an argument to the OEMs where it's a valuable proposition for them. Is there any company or companies out there that are willing to take a segment like mine and add it to what they already have to make a more valuable proposition?
Earl?
Yeah. In addition to my activities at M.I.S, I'm on the board of the Canadian Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, and I chair a special working group of the association called the Connected Vehicle Working Group. Bob sits on it with me, and Steve, and many here today, Ross, who's been up asking questions. We bring in academia, we bring in different government organizations that want to support us. Primarily, it's an association of the parts manufacturers that, like yourself, that want to build equipment and sell it into the OE market. We reach out to all kinds of technology companies, from academia to small startups to mid-sized and large-sized companies like QNX. It's very active in our committee as well, to try and network people together. Because to be acceptable realistically to an OE, they have a pretty high set of credentials. And if your expertise is in a particular technology, you probably aren't the foremost expertise in just-in-time lean manufacturing processes. But without those, you aren't looked at as a credible supplier. Similarly, you need proper financing and things like this. So one of the things we try and do through this organization is bring together a number of Canadian companies, universities, and technology and partners in this, in hopes that they'll collaborate together and create relationships like I have with my company by licensing and helping commercialize technologies from universities that didn't have that role. And we're seeing more and more of that discussion. It's a young group. It's very energetic. We've got a number of projects we're going to try and do to demonstrate that. What we do have is the ability to take a very small company to the highest levels in the OE to get exposure. But only if they meet a certain criteria can we get them in. But as soon as we can get them in through a partnership or a collaboration, then, as I said before, the door's wide open to get a meeting with the right people that can give you some real decisions. So that's one organization that's acting. There are many organizations like that, but I think collaborating with others, like the minister talked about in the presentation at lunch, is essential for us to get the Ontario technologies on the shelf. Because it takes the skill set of a few of us typically, especially if you're going after the OE as your target market. And it's especially dependent on having the right, quite a set of parameters available.
Is that working group open to small companies to be able to join?
Yeah, if you go, we encourage you to follow us. You'll get emailings and so on. Just go on the APMA website and look for the Connected Vehicle Working Group, and you'll be able to register yourself, and we'll make sure we make you aware of different activities. We've done some tech shows. We'd like to do some more. We're looking at doing some demonstration vehicles where we all collaborate with our technologies on some cars, and again, build relationships between people. So that's one way you can do it, because it is tough out there on your own to get where you need to get to. So that's what we're there to do, is help. Steve?
And I'll put a plug in again for the investment fund that the Ontario government is setting up with OCE, because that is one of the types of things that we're looking for, that to help support and find opportunities to link people together or to provide some seed funding. And there should be announcements coming out on that probably near the end of June. So keep your ears crossed or eyes open, and away we go.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're at the end of our time. I see John is coming back up again here.
Thank you all. I think this is an amazing, exciting area that we've talked a bit about this afternoon. There's a lot of potential in Ontario. I think the panel that we've got is really representative of that. Having Steve and Phil with their background with MTO and Phil now with DELCAN, but then having a couple of companies that are supplying the bits and pieces that we need, like M.I.S. and G4 Apps, and then a great company like QNX, part of BlackBerry, that's really it is one of those companies that we don't hear about so much, but you told me this morning, how many cars you're in, you think, so far?
Our average run rate is about 11 million a year.
11 million vehicles from a company here in Ottawa. I mean, we've got all the pieces that we need here, and the people, and basically we're at this point, this great inflection point where we can begin to pull it together, and we can make it happen here. I think we all have a bit of a role to play in doing that. I mean, it can start as a consumer, as asking the vendor, the person that sells you that automobile, is where are these features that you're looking for? And it starts with then talking as well to the people that set the regulations, the politicians and your MPP, your MLA, even your city officials, is what are they doing about developing these technologies and supporting them and trialing them. A really important point that was raised too, and we see this not just in this sector but in others, is finding customers, places to trial this. And it's great to see the MTO on the stage and willing to figure out ways to pilot the technologies. That, as much as capital or in the investment that companies need customers even more than they need that investment if you're going to succeed. So we each have that role as consumers, and we each can influence the people that set these regulations and to help to adopt the technologies that we develop right here. So I'd like to thank all the panelists, Steve Erwin, Bob Burrows, Kerry Johnson, and Earl Hughson. Your knowledge has been great. It's great interaction and great questions that we've had. And thank you very much, Phil, for pulling the group together and moderating this afternoon. I'd like to offer each of you a small token of our appreciation.